the day of going to a movie just for CG spectacle is over.
Yes.
It's no more.
No one cares.
Welcome to another CG garage where the monstrous moon shines. We're building new Hollywood like in 1971's prime. From Otter's bold dreams to AI's fever dream, where tech meets the silver or LED screen. Pixels and passion, a pipeline's unknown to host one show on a deadline postponed.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 547, featuring the amazing Marc Rienzo. And I have known Marc for pretty much most of my career in visual effects. And he is one of the most talented people I know out there. I've actually tried to have, he and I have been trying to do this podcast, I'm not kidding you, for years. And somehow the schedules never lined up and everything else. So we finally got it out there. And I can guarantee you this is not going to be the only time you hear Marc on a podcast. He will be on as well. This is just an introduction to him, as I'm sure he'll be on other things, including some of our panels that we have in the future. He is an incredible artist, absolutely amazing person. Wanted to be a comic book artist and then pivoted to visual effects and did that and became a compositor. That was his passion, and he is arguably one of the best compositors in the world. And he's done a lot of work. But I will tell you this, one of the things you will definitely know you have seen that he has done is the final shot in the very first Spider-Man in 2002. That was one of the big shots that he had done. It is still on his reel today, and really, really great. Obviously, he's done some incredible work since then, including working on Ray Tracing for the Win, where he worked with me. So he's the one who created all those establishing shots for that, and we talk about it in the podcast itself. He's since pivoted, or at least diversified his art in some ways, and gone back to comic books and trying to make his own comic book, and that's really fantastic. I'm super excited about that. He's used the things that he's done in visual effects and in 3D even to sort of help figure out how he wants to make his comic books, and I think it's great. I think people need to sort of look at the diversity of different kinds of arts or different ways of expressing their art in order to figure out how they're going to balance their way beyond where visual effects are today. So really great example of what Marc is doing, and people need to follow that. Okay, in terms of the podcast, I am actually, when this podcast comes out, I will technically be on vacation in Belize fly fishing. So that's going to be great. But that also means that next Monday, I'm going to take the week off from the podcast. So you will have we'll just taking 1 week off from the podcast. So you should be able to have another episode coming on after that. But if you're new to the podcast, welcome. We are at cggarage.com is our website. If you have ideas for the podcast or comments, you can always email us. It is podcast@cggarage.com is our email. You can also follow us on Discord. We have a great Discord. Just go to cggarage.com/Discord, and that'll redirect you to the Monstrous Moonshine Discord, which also includes discussions about podcasts as well. So hopefully you guys can join us there. But for now, please enjoy episode number 547 with Marc Rienzo.
This episode of CG Garage is sponsored by CenterGrid Virtual Studio. Wondering why you went to film school just to be stuck managing hardware life cycles? CenterGrid delivers end-to-end GPU-accelerated cloud workstations built specifically for VFX and creative production, with flat, predictable pricing and personalized support from people who actually get your workflow. Plus, CenterGrid is TPN Gold Shield certified, so your studio's security is locked down. Check out what Virtual Studio can do for your pipeline at cgvirtualstudio.com. This episode of CG Garage is sponsored by Kitbash 3D, one of our favorite tools and an essential tool for 3D artists everywhere. With the largest library of cinematic quality production-ready 3D assets, Kitbash 3D ensures that your studio has the tools to build stunning environments quickly, efficiently, and at scale. Design detailed worlds in a fraction of the time without compromising on quality. Head to kitbash3d.com and use the code CGGarage at checkout for 10% off any kit. Again, that's kitbash3d.com, code CGGarage.
All right, Marc, you and I have actually tried to do this podcast for several years.
It's been a while, and I'm sorry about that. It's just always one thing or another, right?
Yeah, it's been a while, and it's all good. It's all good. I'm actually like, sometimes the waiting is better because you have more things to talk about or more interesting things, which I know you do. So I'm very interested in that. But as this podcast has been evolving over the years, I obviously used to do a lot of long interviews with people, find out their back history, which I'm going to get to with you for sure.
Sure.
But I'm actually very curious about your point of view of the industry and your point of view of where things are going as well. And that's going to get interesting. So we were going to be talking about that as well. So, but before, let's get some context to people. Okay. I know, you went to school for this in the early days when there was a school for this, kinda, right? But you've been a specialist in this area for a long time as well. But I'm curious, what got you interested in doing it? Like, what got you interested in movie making and into visual effects and computers and all that stuff?
I mean, like most of us, always was a diehard Star Wars fan and everything. However, filmmaking, I never thought it was a actual job opportunity that as an artist was something I could do. I always dabbled in computers, and I was always painting on them and trying to see what I could do with them while drawing and everything. I wanted to be a comic book artist, but when I started at School of Visual Arts as a comic book illustration major, and then I saw Jurassic Park, and it was like the world changed. It was like everything's changed. The future, you could see it, like everything was disrupted. Like, this is the way we're going to tell stories. And it opened the door to so many possibilities. Like those T-Rexes, it was just blew my mind. Like everybody else in Abyss and stuff. And there I met a friend, Joshua Cortez, who was at the computer animation major at School of Visual Arts. And I didn't even really know what that was other than what I just saw. And their program was super new. So I was really kind of rattling my head around for that whole first year.
And where did you go to school?
I started at School of Visual Arts in Manhattan. So I started doing more research and stuff. And then I started hearing a lot more about Ringling School of Art and Design, where there was a handful of students, alumni that had already like landed at Pixar and ILM and stuff. And I was like, wow, like SVA had the program, but Ringling's, had just been around a few more years already. So not to mention it was a record year of blizzards in New York City, and I was freezing to death.
Where are you from originally?
Long Island, but
Long Island.
A broke college student in Manhattan walking around with your giant portfolio bag. It was just in blizzards. And then you're looking at the brochure of Ringling, and there's kids painting on the beach and stuff. Like, this is not a hard decision here. So I left.
There's a reason why a lot of New Yorkers retire there, right?
Oh God. Yeah. Although I didn't really like Zara until fairly recently, to be honest, but that's another conversation.
Sure.
So I transferred down there and got in the computer animation program. And so while, yes, there were schools at the time, I had no interest in being a character animator. I mean, I kind of knew that from the beginning. I was always blown away by the movie magic behind the scenes stuff, like just seeing like blue screen, just any before and after blue screen stuff, which, is very limited back then. Like you had to get, maybe there was like a featurette or something. I was just fascinated. Like, that is freaking cool. I eventually learned what a compositor was. I didn't even know what that term was.
Right.
And that was what that was kind of in my head of what I wanted to do. Some of my teachers didn't really support that. I mean, I almost flunked out, but for my like senior project, I went and I shot Super 16. I rented a little stage, a blue screen, and had an astronaut suit shipped out from California. And I did this a faux movie trailer. It was a ton of fun. And looking back at it, it's horrible. It looks like an Avid avid ref.
Sure.
But-
But what year is this we're talking about?
97, 98. So
Right.
barely any internet. My instructors were, animators. I had the composer manual. It was kind of it. And then just
And that's what you composited in? It was in Composer?
in Composer. So it was like,
Wow.
and I have Photoshop. I had spent all my savings. I bought myself an O2, and I didn't know what I didn't know yet, right? So I was just making lots of mistakes and learning along the way, and it kind of worked out. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, buying an O2
Yeah.
as a student, that is a commitment. That's all in.
There was about 4 or 5 of us that I graduated with that all kind of like found a way. And
How much was an O2 back then? It must have been probably remember.
With the student discount, and then the software with the student discount, I probably have the receipt somewhere, but
Yeah.
I think it was like 8 or 12 grand.
Yeah.
It was around that.
That's a lot of money for a student.
Yeah.
But without the student discount, that's like $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. It was expensive.
Right. Well, the main reason that really pushed me to do it was, I'm not trying to come on here and bash my old school because I'm grateful of going there and everything. But they were,
of course,
they were pretty strict with their lab time. You had because they only had so many computers, so you had to sign up for lab time. But then they were pretty strict, and like the lab closed at I think 10 p.m.
Oh, right.
And you're 20 years old, you could work 3 days, like 10 o'clock. That's we were doing all nighters. So me and those guys got our own. So what we would do is we would work all day there, and when they kicked us out, we would render there. And that was part of the reason, is because you had to have render time. So the machine switched over to the render farm. But then I would go home and work all night and then come back in and just repeat. And I'd be rendering at home while I was there and rendering there.
Right.
I was telling a friend recently, I kind of like, I think I had 4 gigs on the O2 to work with, or 5, or maybe 5. And then the operating system and the software takes up like a third or half of that.
And we're talking, that's disk space. Your memory was significantly less than that.
Yeah, I'm talking about storage space. So when I shot all these, the blue screens and stuff, what I did was at first I started with zip disks. Like each shot would be on a zip disk, and I would be switching back and forth, working off those disks. And then, I talked the school into getting a CD burner, and I burned them to CDs, and I'm literally compositing with my plates on a CD-ROM. So you can imagine how slow that was, not even including the era of how, the age of the computers. So, it's good times. It's good times.
Yeah, man. I mean, when you and I were working on, were you on Day After Tomorrow? You were on Day After Tomorrow, right?
I was supposed to be. That's another
but
story.
I remember on Day, you were a DD at that time.
Yeah,
so
I came back.
I
was on Grinch, and then I went away for a couple other studios, and then I came back. Brian Grill had, I was excited to come back and work with everybody, and I was going to go on Day, and then I got there, and then they swapped me into iRobot, which at first I was like not happy about, because I was excited. I wanted to work on a disaster movie. I hadn't done it.
Right.
But I decided to.
You were better off on that. but the I remember the disk space that we had to do all of Day After Tomorrow with was 2 terabytes. That's all we had.
Wow.
For the whole digital domain, for an entire major blockbuster film, we were only dealing with 2 terabytes of disk space.
Just thinking of some of those shots you guys did, that's hard to imagine.
Yeah. Okay. So you were obviously a little bit of a rebel going through school, doing what you wanted to do. How did you land your first job?
Well, that was another thing. I talked about what I didn't know what I didn't know. That was one of the other allures of Ringling, is a lot of the big studios would have recruiting trips there and give a presentation and stuff. So I got to meet a lot of people. And the one that I'll never forget, and I'm very thankful for to this day, was John Burton from ILM came, and he saw what I was doing. and I had so many questions for him, and he was like, "You're doing it the right way." Because I just painted backgrounds in Photoshop based from photographs, so it's matte paintings. I had no idea.
Right.
And he's like, "This is the right way to do it." I don't remember some of the other specifics, but he encouraged me that to keep doing it, and to hear that from a visual effects supervisor at ILM when you're in school and your teachers are telling you something else. That was super exciting and fun. So then when they came recruiting, I was offered a job at PDI, and then at SIGGRAPH, I met with Lawrence Plotkin at DD.
Okay.
And DD was kind of like the place I wanted to go, because in my mind, that was the mecca for compositing.
Yep.
Right. So although I'd heard I'll get to that later when I did go. So I remember, Lawrence Plotkin was the recruiter. Price Pathel is who I met.
Okay.
And so I sat down with Price and we chatted. It was just the interview at SIGGRAPH, they're generally short.
Yep.
And he spoke to me for at least an hour. I remember Lawrence coming in what's going on?
Right.
It was like, come on, we got a line of people out here. So that was exciting. I was offered a job at DD and I was so torn. I ended up going to PDI, which I'm super grateful that I did, because I got a super crash course, because everything was proprietary, and man, those guys just built everything from the ground up. So, what's the word? At every little detail and systematic, just command line stuff and everything, command line software. I learned more there. I learned so much in that first job. And then I eventually made my way back down to DD for Grinch.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then left and came back many times, starting with Robot.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
That's where we met, right? On iRobot.
We met on iRobot. I think that's
Robot. Yeah.
Both, right? iRobot first, and then Stealth, and a bunch of things. Yeah. And I mainly, I became friends with Rob Niederhorst on Day, and then he introduced me to you. Okay. So a lot of roads lead back to Rob Niederhorst.
Oh yeah, yeah. I always think of Rob, and when I did go to DD, the biggest on my day one, they sat me down on a Windows NT machine, and from working in Unix, and then all of a sudden you're on Windows. It was like, whoa! And Brian Girl brought me over. And he's like, hey, meet Rob Niederhorst, and Rob got me going.
Yeah, and I guess that was when you and I were there. That's when Nuke was still proprietary to Digital Domain as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It was Nuke 2.
Nuke 2, right. Yeah. And when you opened Nuke, it was just a gray slate with one node in the middle, and that's it.
I still think it's way better than anything else. even the ancient versions of Nuke are amazing. That's what I'm saying.
I agree. But to me, I didn't know anything about compositing except for After Effects. I always thought in layered systems. Yes. And so to me, suddenly node systems were like, this doesn't make any sense. And then when your brain finally makes the switch, you're like, oh.
Exactly. So, my light just crashed. Okay. Yeah, so I learned on Composer before it was even Maya Composer, just Composer, and that was all timeline. But when I got to PDI, wasn't long before the node graph came out, and I remember the guy came through, and I was like, "Yeah, I haven't really looked at that yet." And he's like, "Just give it a day. I promise you, I'll look back." And I was very hesitant, but I did exactly what he said, and I'm like, just your eyes open. You're like, this is the way, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm glad I had that experience, because I can pop in After Effects. Makes sense, you can do both.
Yes. Yeah. And it was important. So, I've always, there are certain things that people are good at. Like, when I think about some of my favorite compositors that I work with, and it's an important part of the role, right? Because as a lighter, my role is to give back in, at least in the day. Now things are obviously changing, which we're going to talk about as well. But back in the day, my role as a lighter is to give the compositor the best quality I can give out of lighting, that the compositor is going to turn into something amazing. And I'll say this more upfront. It's like in the early days of digital domain, lighters were not necessarily the strongest lighters, right?
Sure.
And the compositors were magicians for turning that lighting into something that looked unbelievable, right? And that is one of the reasons that digital domain at that time became like the mecca of compositing. They could make everything look really, really, really good, right? And so I think that was a magical thing that was possible. Do you agree with that, or?
100%. And those are the days I miss and love. Getting great lighting is obviously amazing, great, but
right.
I think the real cutoff was iRobot is before, when every shot was treated like a one-off. You had a few shots, we didn't have 2,000 visual effect shots or 1,000 visual effect shots.
That's right.
You had to, systematize it. You can't work that way on thousands of shots or hundreds of shots because it just breaks down.
Yep.
That's exactly what happened, I think. So then once you expand that big, you have to deliver better elements because there's not that many compositors that can do it. And even if you did, then you're balancing consistency, and it becomes unwieldy in the time that the schedules explode. And all you need is one compositor that it's not really working, and the whole thing falls apart, right?
Right. Yeah, but that was a sort of a clear thing to me. It's like trying to understand, what the role of the compositor was, because I came from a world where there wasn't compositing, right? I came from the world as what comes out of the computer, that's what you got. And then I didn't realize the quality and the breadth of knowledge that a compositor can do, even to an all CG shot. To me, is like, but it's already finished. You see, I just put it on my computer, it's done, right? And I didn't know the power of that. And it's important to know that like compositing can do so much more, through doing what it is. And it was actually on Day After Tomorrow when I was working on stuff that never made it to the movie because those shots got pulled and put into something else. But I was working closely with Brian Grill, who's an incredible compositor. I'm sure you probably learned a lot from him as well at the time. And he showed me like what he could do to my renders that I couldn't do. Right?
Yeah.
And he's like, here's what I can do. And I was like, oh, so I don't have to fix everything. I understand. I give you the tools that allows you to do what you're supposed to do, so.
Yeah, having bounced around in a lot of studios back then, I remember, and I was a lighter compositor at Sony ImageWorks, and I remember some guys were like re-rendering stuff and adjusting hues and black levels. I'm like, dude, come here, let me show you something. It's really easy.
Right. Yeah, but that was the thing. So you still gravitated towards that level of compositing, right? You thought about compositing in that way because you were thinking final image. That was the thing I think was important, right?
Yeah. So while I didn't want to be a character animator, I learned my not alias wavefront. Right. But I noticed this is where I realized I want to be a compositor. I learned to rig and model and the whole thing, but I was always rushing to the comp. I like that final step. So once I kind of loved that the industry was built around like, oh, well, I like doing this, but I love doing this. I'm kind of good at this, but I think I'm way better at compositing.
Sure.
So if I'm getting amazing lighting from someone that loves to do that, that sounds great. I'd rather get amazing elements and just stay in the comp. As opposed to try to be a generalist. It's too much.
And vice versa. And vice versa. I mean, I was, I want to talk about you. You were our lead compositing guy for Ray Tracing for the Win, right? And so we did a lot of work with you on that, and all of those establishing shots of the city and the train moving through the landscape. You did, and there was only a handful of shots. I'm saying maybe a dozen shots or so, but you took the renders that we had out of that and you just made them look so much more photoreal, added so much more detail, so much more believability that most people saw that and are like, where did you shoot this?
That's awesome. That's really cool to hear. I mean,
yeah,
the renders were great, but I think that's, I mean, well, it's just a matter of, I kind of figured this, I mean, sorry, you said,
yeah.
I would always systematize things. So I'd like, okay, these like I could see how far these renders were or what I thought was needed or anything. But even the best CG in the world that I've ever received, it was the idea in my mind as a compositor is what I put out. I don't care how fantastical it is, what the creature is, or how unrealistic it is. It's supposed to look like it was filmed on the day. My job is to make it look invisible. People talk about invisible effects and then, the big spectacle stuff. Like, to me, there shouldn't be a difference. Like, of course we know that they didn't have a dinosaur. Of course we know there was this guy flying around with whatever superhero it is, but like, it should look real. And sometimes there's only so much you can do in comp because whatever the camera work, that wasn't filmed. There's only going to be so real. But the filmic qualities, the small details, like, it's not whatever the edges and the sharpness, and I'm not just talking about like lens flares and vignettes and that stuff that hides stuff. I'm just talking about the actual, like, it's just contrast levels and all those little details really add up. Some people just kind of copy paste that stuff. It's like, oh, this is per shot. It's fun to dial it in. Agreed.
And we're going to talk a little bit about how you balance those aesthetics and photorealism from your point of view. But because you mentioned, and we have to get into this, Spider-Man. You did a very big key shot in Spider-Man. And that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I know it was a long time ago, but it was a very important one. And you were at Sony at that time. You had to do the lighting compositing yourself, right?
I was a lighter compositor, and I lit a whole lot of shots, and I'm super proud of it. But that big final shot, there were several lighters. There were several lighters, and I just did the compositing on that. I don't know if you know the story behind that. It's kind of infamous.
Go ahead. Tell us. First of all, tell the shot so people remember what the shot is. But it is the first Spider-Man, right? It was the
very first Spider-Man. It was the end shot, LSO1, last swing. And I remember the number. I've gone to different studios, and it still happens occasionally to this day. We're like, oh, you're that guy.
You're the guy who did that shot.
No, not the shot. The story behind it. So,
okay. Tell now we got a story. Great.
So there was lighters and there was compositors, and then, but at Sony, you did both. So there's some compers lighting that were mainly a compositor and vice versa. Most of the compositors didn't really enjoy it or stick with it. I did. I enjoyed it. And the reason, let me back up a little bit. When I was offered the job, I took it because, I was only in the industry a few years at that point. I started in 98 and that was 2000. So I started to hear the thing that people would say something like, just a compositor. I started hearing that too much. And like, I am, but I know I could do more. So it just kind of irked me a little bit, to be put in a box. So when I got that opportunity, I was like, absolutely, I want to do it. So I got to light some shots and comp some shots, and I got to learn that they had their own proprietary compositing package, Bonsai, and met a lot of amazing people. And it was awesome. However, as I know have experienced, a lot of shots. Back then we're working on octanes, very slow. It took a lot longer to do work. We all know that. But I might have gotten a month or 2 months on a shot, a relatively, mid-level shot, not something giant. And then I think I started to earn the trust of my supervisor, lead, and people around me and stuff. So as I started seeing this monster shot come out of previs, it's like I hadn't seen it yet. Maybe people knew about it. I didn't know about it until like I think it was the last month when I first started seeing it come out of previs. He's swinging all through New York City and everything, and well, he lands up on the flagpole with on the Empire State Building. No, and the Chrysler buildings in the background, not the other way around. I might have it back there. No, I have it reversed. He's on the Chrysler building.
Right.
And I started bugging my supervisor, Daniel Eaton. I'm like, hey, who's doing that shot? Who's doing that shot? I want that shot. I want that shot.
Right.
It was, try to get myself in there. And then, he came back to me. Point is there was no time. Like the amount of time that shot needed versus all the other shots to that point, like that should have had 10 times, in my opinion. And it's nobody.
Yep.
I'm not pointing fingers or anything, but that's just the way
that's just how the schedule.
That's how the ball
happening.
bounced. So so I got assigned as compositor, and then it was Jeff Stern, John Manos, and Dan. Forgetting his name. It's been almost 30 years. We were there killing it. Like we were there round the clock, working our butts off. And I feel like I'm forgetting something before I get to the climax here. But
this was 1,000+ frames, right? I mean, it was a long shot.
Easily, yeah. Yeah, it was a long shot. So I'm young. I could go without sleep. It was not a problem. And we were already approved for ridiculous amount of overtime. And I was saying, like, I need more time. Like the clock was ticking, and I was given the green light to just get it done. So 3 days later, we're all still there. We hadn't gone home, and somebody heard that we were just kind of living there, getting the shot done, and Tim Sarnoff came down with a bunch of executives, and they kicked us out. And they were like, you guys have to go home. Because before that, there was Hollow Man, which I'm sure you've heard stories of. Of
course.
Which I was not there for. But
there was probably legal reasons they kicked you out.
Well, there was.
Or labor laws.
They were, and in hindsight, I completely get it. I just, in my mind, this is the first time Spider-Man's going to be on film. I'm a comic book fan. I was so excited and like just honored to be working on it, no less this shot. Of course, I wanted it to be my very best work. And so I was kind of like, I don't know, crushed that like I knew the shot wasn't going to be as good as it could be in the time. So they sent us home. Literally, they had a PA follow me home to make sure I got home. I don't know if it was to make sure I got home safe or to make sure I actually left. I'm still not even sure. But I came back the next day. We did our best to get it the best it could be. But everyone seems to still talk about it and love it. So I still keep it on my reel. But there's a better version on my reel that I did a little color tweaking on after the fact. Come on.
Couldn't help yourself.
But yeah, I wish we got the proper time on that because, man, that was fun.
It's an epic shot, and then I remember seeing that film, and I loved it. I loved the first Spider-Man. I thought it was fantastic. I actually think the second Spider-Man as a story was fantastic as well. But I do remember seeing that, and this was, before every movie was a superhero film, right? But this was when it was still fresh and exciting, and Sam Raimi was such a great guy in terms of director. But you go through that whole narrative, right? You go through his transformation and everything that has happened to Peter Parker and Spider-Man and everything. And that is it. That shot is the pinnacle experience of that movie. Now, I know how you're feeling about it. I know how it's so precious to you, and you wish you could do something better. But to me, I'm just looking at that like, nope. That's great. That's perfect. That's the climax of the film. So you should be proud of that, man. That was a really great shot.
I'm definitely over it now. And I've worked on 2 Spider-Man since, but it was that was a great learning experience so that, it's not your movie. Like
Right.
they love it. They're happy. Job done. Right. So
Absolutely.
you can,
Absolutely.
you can make suggestions all day long and kill yourself to try to make it look, that's all you can do is try to do the best you can in the parameters you have and the time that you have.
Let's talk a little bit about quality and what makes something look real and something look beautiful. And I think the thing that's important is, and there's a balance, right?
Of course.
The thing that you do, a lot of what you do, is add imperfections, optical imperfections,
Yes.
into something that the CG doesn't do. So like a lot of things that happen out of CG is, it would come out of a camera that couldn't physically exist because it doesn't have the most perfect coating on the lens or this and that. So you add things that make it feel more optical, and some of those things are imperfections, right? How do you balance it so that it doesn't look cheap?
Yeah.
Like it's a bad camera. It still looks like, where is that balance aesthetically that allows you to think about that?
Well, I'm glad you said that because that's exactly what I was going to say. It's really easy to go too far. And I think a lot of people do go too far. It's like, just put all this crap on the lens and cover it in flares and out of just by default, blur it by 2 pixels. I'm like, okay, you're just putting this big schmutz on the lens to hide the work. Like you're not really doing the work you're supposed to do. So, I mean, how to find that balance? I think it's just experience and, actually being a fan of film and looking at film and being able to step back and look at your work and see, am I just making a optical flare poo bath? Like, no, it's
right.
It should be consistent. And the one thing I still to this day, I see a lot of people do, especially on all CG shots, look at the surrounding shots. Like your shot is all CG. You're banging it up and beating it up to try to make it look real. Don't do that. Just what you think. Look at the footage around it. Like, what is it cut from? It's just, and I started compositing before there was DI. So these were things like you pretty much, delivered the final
on
image.
film.
On film. So you delivered the final image. So part of that was making sure it cut. And making sure it cut is more than just, adjusting some hues and black levels, contrast. Obviously, DI does a lot more than that. I'm generalizing, but it is the optical like defects like you're talking about that are key. A lot of guys I see, oh my God, just chroma aberration by default at, turned up. Like, no, match what the prior shot was.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of my best, obviously I did that with you, and you'd always sort of like, I trusted you and you made it look right and everything else. But I remember working with Paul Lambert, right?
Yeah.
On Oblivion, right? And Paul now, who's probably going to be up for 2 Oscars this year. It's just
every year. I mean, isn't that every year right now?
Every year now, man, he's up for an Oscar. Yeah, and so it's crazy. I'm so proud of Paul. But I remember on Oblivion, this was the first time that we were seeing the Sony F65 camera, right? Which is an insanely high quality, way ahead of its time camera. But he and I he would sit me down, not him, like mostly him. He would sit me down, make me look at grain patterns of the F65, look at the chromatic aberration. He was going and compositing and matching anything that the lenses were doing and these were like crazy good lenses. But he made me sort of dial in my V-Ray settings so that my grain and V-Ray would be as close as possible to the F65, which was so low that our render times had to go way up. This is before we had AI denoising or anything like that. We would just literally match the ray tracing grain to and that was when I realized, like, no, our responsibility is to the DP. Right? Like our responsibility is to match the look that the DP had, not to just say, I want to make it look like whatever,
Right. And that's goes back to exactly what I say, where your work should be invisible. regardless of the content. As a compositor, that should be your goal. If you're not thinking about the camera that they use to film everything with, or the DP's direction and everything, you're not doing your job. Like that's how you keep it consistent with the other stuff. Obviously DI can do a lot, and they can do way more today than they could way back then.
Yeah.
But your job is to give them the best thing to start with.
Yeah.
I saw.
And
I always hated the fix it in DI.
Oh God. Yeah.
Unless it's a little color tweak, right? Like,
well, unless it's the role of the DI to do that, right? Or like to get a look that they want to establish. Right. When we, just to put it in context, when we would do our shots, right, and we do a composite, right, and we would get close to final, the VFX supervisor say, okay, final, that wasn't actually the final yet, right? You would actually go back to the composite, you would gamma it way up, make sure the black levels were all matching, make sure everything was this. We used to call it Gauntlet, right? To like make sure it was bulletproof. Yep. Because if you go through these transformations, if you're going through a telecine, which takes film and goes back to television, if the blacks don't match, it will show up on TV. And you could see that a lot. Like you could see composites that are not good on TV. Right. All the time back in the early 2000s. Right. But after we gauntleted it, we didn't go to DI, like you said. We would go to the lab, and it would get filmed out in color times, which is the lab version of DI. And we would look at film and say, does that match the rest of the movie? Yeah. So we actually looked at film.
Yes. The film outs and stuff. I remember.
Yeah. Yeah, it was honestly, there was a certain discipline to that.
I'm trying to remember what the last film I worked on where we did actual film outs. Was Stealth film outs or digital?
Stealth was on film, yeah.
Well, it was definitely shot on film, but did we actually?
No, we did film outs, yes, for sure.
We did.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
The thing I liked the most about film outs, especially at DD, was you couldn't pause it.
Oh,
you had to look at it running because otherwise it'd burn out on the projector.
Right.
So you'd have these looped shots that would go through, and you would just watch the shot over and over again, but you couldn't pause it. So it's like, because that's how it's going to play in theaters. It's not going to pause on a frame. So yeah, but it was interesting. So okay, so you were at DD for a while. You obviously worked at Sony, worked at a couple other places, but then what happened after? Where did your career go for that?
Well, I mean, I was back and forth to DD. That's a whole Nuke conversation, because once I used Nuke, going back to Shake was kind of a nightmare. That was I went to Weta 3 times, and the first time I was in Shake, and I was on 2 towers. This is just, I used to love learning new software, Bonsai, and whatever, Comp Time and ILM, but going back to Shake after using Nuke was really difficult. And I remember just telling everybody about Nuke, and my good friend Eric Winkwest, who's amazing there. He's still there to this day. I was telling him about Nuke and Jim Reigel. And then when I came back, what did I come back for? Waterhorse. They had switched. At that point, there was like this internal battle of the studio. Half the studio was on Shake, half the studio was on Nuke. And it was like, I just remember a couple guys joking with me, like, you're the guy that, you're the problem. Why we, there's this whole like,
why we have Nuke.
Yeah. So I remember I was given the choice to use Shake or Nuke, and there was nothing to think about there. So then it was really cool so now I could, as much as I love DD, but now Nuke was spreading, right? So, who's that beep? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
you. But yeah, and then it really kind of set off. I worked with Nita Horst at Sway on those early Joe Kaczynski commercials, the mezzo spots.
Yeah. So the earliest Joe Kaczynski, who's now like a superstar director, but you worked on some of those. Yeah.
So where did it go? I don't know, man. I freelanced. I just kept bouncing around. I liked challenging myself with different stuff, working with different people, but at the same time going back to working with people that I really liked working with. And then slowly worked my way into supervising and getting on set experience. So just was kind of an evolution of just, I like to learn. I like to challenge myself and do different things, new things.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so I mean, I always thought of you as like the gun for hire, right? You like if something needs to look great, you call the wolf, right? You get the, I was like, oh no, I'm in trouble. Get the wolf, And so, and you were always that guy who would like take something and like, just like, okay, I can save you up, this is what I can do. And so I've always thought of it that way, but obviously you do a lot more and you've done other things, but you've recently, obviously the world has changed. So what's your view? Like what motivated you to make some of the changes in your life to do where you are? And the industry obviously affected you and how you're thinking about things, right?
Yeah. I mean, where it's going, I probably have more questions for you because feel a little disconnected. But
but let's start with where you are now, and then we can talk about where it's going.
Yeah, so I think it was really COVID. Everything closed, right? Everything was shut down, lockdown, all that. So I didn't get into visual effects to just do visual effects. I wanted to tell my own stories, so I was like learning how to do this stuff, like creating images, but also just filmmaking in general. I was always paying attention and seeing how, all the different directors and supervisors and stuff and how shots were put together, or sequences were planned out, as much, whatever I can learn. It was a sponge. That's why I liked moving around so much instead of staying in one place, because you learn different pipelines and different tools, you meet different people, you see how different studios do things. Sometimes it's amazing and sometimes it's not the right way to do it. And it's just part of the learning, right? So, but then in 2020, when everything shut down, so I made this card game with my kids and it was a lot of fun. I got to, create some silly characters with them. We did a Kickstarter and it was successful and it was a lot of fun. So that really kind of, after that was done and everything, got back to work and everything, I really missed that. I realized that was great. And that was just a quick kind of fun thing. I wanted to get back to telling my actual stories that I always wanted to do. So at that point, I think I was working on another Spider-Man and then another Spider-Man, among other things. So obviously some of the excitement after you've done it started to wear off a little bit. I'm still very grateful, great career and doing what I want and getting paid to do it and having fun. But I really wanted to find a way to get back, to take some time and tell my stories. So, but at the same time, doing your own film takes a lot of money, a lot of people. So it's just kind of sitting right in front of me. I always wanted to be a comic book artist. I still love comic art. Why don't I just do a comic book? So I really started digging in and practicing my anatomy and drawing and stuff in 2020 at the same time with the whole card game. And I realized this is something I definitely underestimated it. Like, they're stills. Like, we work at 24 FPS. Like, of course I could do stills, but then that still has to be perfect. And you have to choose the right still and all of that. So I definitely underestimated how much work it was, but I'm having a blast doing it. So I've got my first print proof here. The old man and the omnipotent. And, had a few corrections I had to make, and I'm waiting on the updated print. So moving forward with that. And, but
how did all right. Granted, yes, I know you're a fantastic illustrator. I see you illustrate. You got a great Instagram. It's amazing stuff. I know you can do the work as an artist. What about the business of it? What about how do I find a way? How do I get this published? How do I do where do people? Because I know there's a lot of people in this industry that have that other thing they can do really well, right? Like you're doing, and they need advice in terms of how do I pivot my career or how do I pivot my creativity to do something different and maybe start earning some money off of that thing. So what did you do? Did you find a publisher? Did you do a Kickstarter? How does it all work for you?
Well, I wish I had more advice to give. I have a bazillion questions myself. But doing the Kickstarter in 2020 for the card game, I saw
Yeah.
the test run. I'm like, I know how, like, have an understanding how this works now. And I can hopefully do it on on something that's much more, not just a one-off project, like a bigger project, right?
Sure.
So, although it is an entire job in itself, and I don't enjoy the whole social media thing and the Kickstarter, and I don't want to be a marketer. I don't want to be I hate that part, to be perfectly honest.
Yep.
But it is required. So, what advice? Yeah, I would say save your money. So money, because money is freedom. You can do your own thing, man. That's a loaded statement, I suppose. But
Right.
but yeah, and doing a comic book, while I can draw, being able to do a comic book, you have to be able to draw anything from any angle, right? Which I'm not that good at, to be able to do that. So I was really, like I said, digging into anatomy books. Proco.com was an eye opener for me for anatomy. I was learning a lot, but I still wouldn't have been able to do it with, now, anybody, professional visual effects people that are listening to this are going to laugh at me, but I stumbled into DAZ 3D.
Yep.
And I was like,
Okay.
I toyed around with it, but the software is totally mom and pop.
Right.
But their asset library is extensive.
Sure.
And cheap. So I was able to kit bash my characters, set up my shots, even light them. So
Right.
I could set up my entire scene and shoot it, my master, my lights and all that. And then I bring that into Photoshop and Clip Studio Paint. And that was my foundation. And obviously in that process of working that way, your skills just get that much better too. It's like being an inker in a comic book with a great artist underneath you.
Right.
So I that's been my pipeline for the book, and it's worked out pretty well. The first book took me forever, but I was also writing and laying out. It's going to be a 24 issue series. So the first one, working out the pipeline and the whole flow, took a bit. So issue 2 and 3 will come sooner. Try to work with some publishers, but I'm right at the moment, leaning towards doing the Kickstarter. Just
right.
I think the big thing, at least for me, is I know I'm gonna stick with this. So whether or not I reach a big audience at first, that's hard to do, right? Without having a marketer and doing all those things. So my thought is the consistency of when, someone might not discover it to issue 6 or later on, and then they go back and start from the beginning. At least that's the hope. We'll see what happens, but I am committed to
think that's
finishing
brilliant. I think it's brilliant. Don't ask permission to make your thing. Just do it. Right.
So, but at the same time, while I'm doing this, obviously this is another topic, but the doors have just been blown open with some of this AI stuff. I'm like, oh, maybe I could make a movie,
Right.
So what I am doing, I have laid out, I'm doing a movie trailer for the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what I'm working on now. But obviously I don't want to derail issue 2. So it's just, I'm one guy. It's a lot of work. But the AI stuff, Seed Dance 2, come on. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. But you can use what you've created as your basis for what you're doing in AI, right?
It's exactly what I'm doing. I have my storyboard panels in comic form. And so, but that's the other thing is, I'm sure you've seen, but it's especially bad in the comic industry. There's a huge hatred and pushback on AI, which I completely understand as a visual effects artist. Like, our jobs are uncertain, or at least so it makes sense.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because, this has come up, obviously, and Dan Thrawn brought up the same thing with, you remember Tom Sinamon, right? So Tom, over at DD, he was an amazing animator, and he came from, stop motion, and he did
Right.
Hoth and did all that other stuff. And then when Jurassic Park came along, which is what
Yeah.
inspired you,
Yeah.
his world was turned around, and he had to say, either I get out of this industry or I pivot and do something different. And I feel that a lot of people feel that we're in the same boat, but at the same time, people feel like there's cheating going on. So I don't really know, but there is a lot of arguments about pro and con for this. And I think that that's sort of
when I started the whole special effects crowd was and miniatures and all that stuff was dwindling down. And of course, there was a lot of resentment. Of course, I understood it. My first job at PDI DreamWorks, I sat next to Webster Calcor, who was a stop motion animator who had transitioned to computer animation. So that was pretty cool to get to learn from people from, visual. There's quite a few people that made the transition. Not everybody did, but that's exactly how I see this. It's like, we had a good run. This is changing everything. You can hate AI all you want, but it's not going away. But at the same time, as a storyteller, I'm embracing it because now I can do things that just were not possible before. It's kind of obvious. But what did surprise me, I know there's a lot of people that there's a lot of people that wanted to do their own thing, but there's a lot of people that, they just enjoyed working on film and didn't necessarily want to do their own stuff.
You're right. I think that there's people that don't necessarily, that they wanted to just go to work and composite a shot. They didn't want to make a movie, right? They didn't necessarily want to do that. And I think for them saying, oh, wait, the skill that I've been doing for the last 25 years is no longer applicable, right?
It sucks. There's no question about it.
It does suck, but also, isn't it a little odd now that you need 2,000 people to work on a major film? Right? And so I think that's partially the business side of film is going, do we need 2,000 people to make a film? Right.
Right.
And can I make more profit if I didn't have to hire 2,000 people to make this movie?
Right.
And that's a valid question to ask as in the business of filmmaking. Right. So I think that that's something that we should sort of look at and analyze some ways. But I do think it's great that you have found, even if you're not necessarily compositing, you have found your love of art to continue to tell stories in your way, and then adapting what you've learned over the last 30 years in compositing to make it better.
Yeah, so that's something I definitely avoid it, but you see it online where it's like, oh, what'd you do? You typed it in, AI slop, whatever.
Right.
Anybody can do it and all this. Well, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is the idea and the content in the first place. The day of going to a movie just for CG spectacle is over. Is no more, like rarely among.
No one cares.
Yeah.
And in fact, it was hated on even by people. Yes.
Yeah, of course. Because if you don't care and you're not engaged, like who cares? Like we've seen, how many times we've seen New York get destroyed?
Yes,
we get it.
Well, my classic example is Jurassic World, where people were like, "Well, it wasn't as good as Jurassic Park," and it's like because they used so much CGI. It's like, no, because it was a shitty story.
Exactly. Make me care.
And the only thing that was trying to save it was the CG, which was fantastic, by the way. But that's not the reason it's a shitty story.
Right. As critical as I am on visual effects work, if I go to a movie and it's all at whatever 80%, but the story's great, I don't care. If the visual effects are amazing and the story's great, I'm telling everybody about it. You have to see it.
Well,
but
Thor Ragnarok was not the best visual effects, but a hilarious and great story, right? Or Black Panther is universally accepted as a fantastic, and the visual effects are not that great on Black Panther, right? But you don't care because the story's so good, right? So
I worked on Thor. Thor was fun, but there was a lot of believe me, as you can imagine, there's certain restrictions that you do your best to work within.
Yeah. but the story was hilarious. And I love it.
It was,
And
it was a very rewatchable film, right? Because it's just
absolutely.
Funny. Yeah.
I just rewatched it a week ago, and my son was like, "That's one of the best Marvel films." Like, it's like that's his, because it was so funny and great and unexpected, you know.
Right.
But yeah, I think that this is the thing, right? And like, there's a lot of people that are sort of trying to find a way and define what things are, and you just type that in, right? And that's unfair.
It is, and that's the thing that I see as an advantage of having the visual effects backgrounds. Now I see as another tool. So AI is far from perfect. Obviously, it's making leaps and bounds. Who knows what we're going to have in 6 months, no less than a couple of years. But having that tool set, the biggest problem I see with AI right now is the uncertainty that it's going to understand the specificity of what you're asking it to do. You might get 80%, you might get 90%, but there might be one shot where you're telling it every which way what you want it to do, and it's giving you not quite what you want, or the revision that you want. But with having visual effects on the other hand, like, okay, I know how to get this done. You can get it through. The other guy that's just typing it in, he's not going to get that last shot. He's going to, and you can't.
You and I have spent 20 years making every pixel work. And that.
So if he's making his own film, sure, you can edit it around it. But if you're answering to a client or whatever, whoever else, they want that shot, and it's on you to get it.
For sure. And, it's interesting because I have seen I've seen a lot of AI stuff, as we all have, right? And I can just go to social media now. It's just inundated with it, and it's embarrassing. And I have mostly streaming, and I almost always pay for no ads. But if ever I see an ad now, so many ads have AI stuff in it that it's jarring. Actually, you can see it very quickly. But beyond that, if you have a really good artist or a really good filmmaker, right? Roy Robinson is the one who I always come back to as one of the best examples of that. But Rory created some AI stuff that he's done that is so far beyond everyone else. And yet he says, I'm just using the same tools as everyone is doing. But somehow, because of his eye and because of what he knows what he's doing and because of the way he's doing things, he did a thing that came out last week called We Are Men, right? And it just looks like a David Fincher music video. It's incredible.
I have to check that out.
And it's amazing. And I was like, I didn't even, and you and I have got our eyes trained. I didn't even realize it was AI until I went down and said, oh, that's Roy Robinson. That's probably done with AI. And I would not have known. And it just looks amazing. But that's because the right person is making the right decisions. It always comes down to the right eye and the right decision making that has to be done, right?
Right. And I think that goes hand in hand with what AI gives you is unlimited options. So you have to make those right choices. And for me, I think a lot of people are just, whatever, this is my personal opinion, make the mistake of marketing it whatever online, putting it out online and pushing how they did it versus what it is. I don't care what it is. Like, is it good? That's it. Like, I don't care if you used AI. I don't care if you see, I mean, it's cool to know as my interest as a filmmaker myself for a learning experience. But when the first introduction of your project is whatever model that you used it in, like that shouldn't be your hook.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. We get caught up in these loops of what's the tool, because that's how I'm going to do it. If I use the same tool, I can do the same thing, right? And I remember that the first one of my conversations was on stealth, actually. Remember Lynn Bassis? She was a fantastic lighter.
Yeah.
And she did an incredible shot on stealth. And everyone's like, that looks amazing. What HDR did you use? Because they assumed that the HDR is what made the lighting look so good. It's like, you know?
If you, I follow a lot of my favorite and famous comic book artists. And every time they post something, what pen did you use? What pencil did you use? And there's always it's hysterical. It's like those guys are so good, they could use a crayon. Doesn't
Right. Exactly. That's not the point, right? And it's, yeah. I guess people did get into it a little bit. I'm trying to think. It's like even Rembrandt, right? He had some special chemicals he would use for his paints, and he would do all that. So there was some technology, but in the end, it's still what Rembrandt had in his eye and what he was trying to put on the canvas that mattered, right?
Of course.
So I think that's very fascinating.
Actually, something I just learned the other day from a friend that I went to school with told me that the old masters used grids, like, you draw with the grids, but they would actually build a physical grid to look through in their model. And, people to this day call drawing with a grid cheating, but I didn't know. It's crazy. If your goal, I understand if your goal is to be an amazing anatomical artist and everything, it's of course, but these are tools to help you get there. And one of these, like Photoshop is, cheating in the eyes of, talking about back then when it came out, it's like, of course that was so. Yeah, it's not going away. Is the point?
Did you ever see the documentary? It was, I think it might have been on Netflix, but I don't remember. But it was actually a documentary by Penn Jillette, was the guy who made the documentary, and I guess a close friend of his was the founder of Lightwave. Oh, right? Wow. Okay, and so that guy, the founder of Lightwave, was a very interesting character on its own. He had this theory that Vermeer. Painted the girl with the pearl earring. He painted it using a projection from a camera obscura of the woman. So he reverse engineered like a pinhole camera projection that would be possible back then, and then tried to paint his own Vermeer.
Oh, wow.
In that way. And so the whole documentary is about him trying to and he's like, because he's looking so closely at the painting, and he's like, you see this? That's a chromatic aberration artifact that you would only get from that technology. Why would he paint that in unless it came from the artifact?
I see.
And it was fascinating because essentially,
and he
made a photograph.
He was painting chromatic aberration. Oh.
Yes.
That's cool.
And it would only be from someone like, the founder of Lightwave that would know what that is to see, oh, that's a problem, or that's why it is that way.
Or a film person.
Right.
Yeah.
So is that cheating? Because that's one of the greatest paintings of all time, if that's true, right? So. Yeah. So anyway, it's fascinating. Well, listen, Marc, it's awesome seeing you. Like I said, when we just before we got on, we were talking in emails. Like, I wanted to make sure people knew who you are, because I'm sure I'm going to have you back on the podcast. We have more roundtables these days and talk about technology. And when stuff happens in the news and it's like, oh, this would be a good subject for the podcast, let me know and we can get you back on and we can have these conversations. But obviously I want people to know who you are and where you come from, so people can always reference back to this episode and say, oh, that's Marc, Awesome. And also they're probably going to follow up on your comic book. It's like, oh, remember I was there when he was presenting his first issue of the comic book. So they'll remember that part of it. So.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I'm working on the website. It's up now. It's just getting going. So please check it out.
Good. Absolutely. So when all that stuff happens, let me know the links and we'll put all of those links in the show notes. So I appreciate it, man.
Awesome. It's great catching up and talking to you.
The monstrous moon shines. We're building new Hollywood, like in 1971's prime. From Otter's bold dreams to AI's fever dream, where tech meets the silver or LED screen. Pixels and passion are pipelines unknown to host one show on a deadline postponed.